Now, I want to start this morning talking about a story we have discussed, though the coverage of this in other media has been a bit lumpy. Lumpy is the nicest word I could use. The coverage of the changing of the guard in terms of the board at NZME, New Zealand Media and Entertainment, our biggest privately held media company, controlling the ZB network and a number of other, about half our commercial radio stations. And the Herald, of course, which is one of our oldest and I would say most revered newspapers. So what has happened, just in case you missed it, a Canadian-born New Zealand resident billionaire called Jim Grennan got a 9.3 stake in NZME, and along with a number of other shareholders who garnered the sufficient numbers, they got together and said, this company's gone, and I wasn't in the meetings, I haven't talked directly to these guys, this company's gone a bit woke. And when it's turning down advertising from groups like the New Zealand Jewish Council and groups like Hobson's Pledge, it's turning away money, but it's taking money from the government and other people if it compromises its editorial stance. We as shareholders in this company, we want it to change so that it makes as much money as it can and grows its audience. So they've launched what is a kind of coup. They've sent a letter to the chairman, Barbara Chapman, and other board members saying, we're going to hold an AGM, we're going to vote you out, we're going to replace you with a board which can direct the company in a way, commercial way, that we who own the company are happy with, because at the moment we are not happy. My understanding is these shareholders sent quite a detailed letter about the commercial failings of the company to the current board, a letter which the board has chosen not to share, not to release publicly. That annual meeting is due to take place on the 29th of next month, 29th of April. And I think the letter has to be released by about the 9th of April, because people can't go to that special AGM without knowing what's on the agenda and what it's all about. Now, a lot of you, and I know from the feedback I've got, think a little bit of change at NZME wouldn't be too bad. But the Herald, like the rest of the legacy media, is woke as, and seems to be being run by journalists and columnists with their own political agenda. It regularly turns off its comment section. It doesn't want to know what its readers thinks. And it bans people for life from publishing. People like former cabinet minister, senior cabinet minister, and historian and academic Michael Bassett, never allowed to be published in the Herald again. And let's just say the Herald in particular, I don't apply this to ZB, has got some wokeism in it, a fair lot of wokeism in it. So that's going to change, but fundamentally what the board want, they want the owners want, they want to change the board so the company can make more money and they get a better return on their investment, or the maximum return possible. That's actually what business is all about. There's nothing evil or bad about it. But the union, and I'm not sure how much coverage they have at NZME, Etu is the union. It's run, and it can hardly be described as an unbiased union. I think it's a very bad union to be representing journalists, because somehow Michael Wood, he of the River of Filth comments, he of the, I was a Labour cabinet minister, but I had to resign because I couldn't figure out how to sell my shares in Auckland Airport, I think it was. Michael Woods, he's now head of the union. I don't know how he got the job. He just slots in, because unions in the Labour Party are basically the same thing. They're a revolving door for Marxists. But Michael Woods got into this. He will not come on the platform to talk about his concerns because, of course, he practices cancel culture. And he'd like to practice cancel culture on the platform. But he's been going on about bias because the shareholders have changed and want a change. Well, that's got nothing to do with editorial bias. And there is no Michael Wood, I would say, and the other union delegates at NZB, you have no impartiality to protect. Where was Etu Union when the government gave millions of dollars to the Herald and said, you're not allowed to have a different view from us on the Treaty of Waitangi. Where was Etu Union and its delegate at the Herald when NZME signed up to the Group M vetting to be a politically correct news provider that could then get advertising? Oh, the app's now working. We're back up. That's nice to hear. Apparently the app is back up and working. All right, so where were there howls of outrage as the wokesters at the Herald destroyed public trust in the organisation, took government money and bent the knee to political correctness and wokeism? There was nothing. But now they're claiming they want to have the union delegates. Isaac Davison is the name of the guy. Apparently he's some super journalist, Isaac Davison. Isaac, you're welcome to bring up the platform and talk too. They want to have a meeting with the shareholders, the staff. I think it would be more correct for you to talk to the board, and if the board changes, you can talk to them. The shareholders have no reason operationally to get involved in your concerns, apparently deep concerns, according to the union. And I do note that the union's claims on this have basically just been reprinted verbatim by a whole lot of other woke news media, like I think One News, Radio New Zealand. So they want to meet. Well, Mr. Grennan doesn't have to meet with you. Mr. Grennan needs to manage his investment. And there's plenty. He's not doing anything illegal. And I can't imagine anything further from Jim Grennan's mind than sitting down with a bunch of precious, self-aggrandising, bent journalists who are just going to whinge that they're not able now to take Mr. Grennan and other shareholders' money and run a so-called news organisation that is really just all about them propagating, this is the journalists, their lefty political views. I think they need to cry harder. And there are good journalists there, and I know a lot of people who work there, and you'll keep your jobs, I imagine. Editorial policy, that can be set by the board. They own NZME. And I know for some of the writers on NZME, that's a little bit of a shock. The idea of individual private property and not living in some wonderful socialist collective. But NZME is not a kibbutz, and it never has been. So I think it is unlikely that Jim Grennan and the new board members or the new this ownership group who are pushing change, they have no reason to meet with the journalists. And all they're going to do is hear whining from people who were quite happy to let their integrity and their impartiality be wildly compromised by Willie Jackson and the Labor government and by the worldwide woke movement. And now that the chickens are coming home to roost, they want to have a meeting. They want to have a meeting, they would say, with the fox. I don't think it's going to happen. And I also think, I'm going to make this prediction, I think that the board of NZME, the current board, Barbara Chapman and her mates, I think they are probably going to resign. Because quite clearly they do not have the confidence of their shareholders. They won't release the letter criticising their performance that's been released to them yet. But I just don't see that they've got anywhere to go. And I'm just going to be brutally frank, I don't see that the journalists at the Herald have a right to set editorial policy. You're hired as journalists. You are hired as journalists to implement and carry out editorial policy set by the editors, and the editor is appointed and approved by the board, and that's how it goes. And I'll tell you what, that's kind of how it goes at the platform. I'm the editor. I make the decision. People might feel strongly about things, and I try and give everyone in this organisation as much autonomy as possible. But sometimes things are done that are not in line with our editorial policy. I can't think of anything off the top of my head. And Michael Wood, you're still happy. I'm still happy to have you on the platform to explain your completely untenable, biased political position. but of course you won't. And Isaac Davison, I'd say the same to you. I do note that the Herald's Wellington correspondent, Georgina Campbell, has taken a job, and this is a funny transition. You go straight from being supposedly an impartial, unbiased reporter on Wellington affairs and local body stuff, and then you go off to work for Campbell Barry, the Mayor of Lower Hutt, who's Labour as. You go off to run his office. I presume, Georgina Campbell, that you're being stood down from any work that involves covering local body politics in Wellington, because that'd be a bit bent. That would be a bit bent if you weren't, wouldn't it? As I say, invitation to Etu Union, to Isaac Davison is open. And could I just say to my friends, or my just friends at the Herald and NZME, embrace change. Embrace change. You might find that you enjoy going back to your roots and practicing some real journalism. And I know it'll be a bit of a shock for some of you, but you could find it professionally fulfilling.